Can Florida State exploit Clemson's defensive weakness?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll receive $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Brock Glenn will be making his first start this Saturday from all the reports. And quite frankly, there's not a lot of expectation for a redshirt freshman who hasn't played much, who's been banged up a little bit from last year going against the Clemson defense. At least that's how it looks on the outside looking in. Upon further review, going back and looking at Clemson's most recent game against Stanford, which they got completely gashed in the run game, and quite frankly, just looking at how they play, they do have a weakness, though. The question is, can it be exploited with, again, a quarterback who has very little experience? That is the question. We're going to define how that can happen, at least Florida State making an attempt to improve their rushing offense and get the offense going overall. Now that a quarterback change is made, although it's due to injury, let's talk about that quite a bit. First off, Brock Glenn, as we've discussed at length over the last couple of weeks about everybody's been anxious to see him. Yes, I've seen people question this. He is a mobile quarterback. He's not just a guy that's going to sit in the pocket. Now, when I say mobile, there's a difference. I want to be definitive here. He is not going to be Jordan Travis. The expectations for Florida State fans when they hear mobile is a guy who is as good an athlete as there was on the entire gridiron on any given play. No, he is not that. But he will make the first guy miss. He can run outside, get outside the pocket, beat a guy to the edge, and at least get a pass off, or maybe go get you 5 yards. He can run some speed option. He can run RPO. There are going to be different things that they do with eye candy, with all the different jet motions and things that come with it, and make him an available runner, if you will, if it's there. I'm sure that now they're down to 2 quarterbacks on scholarship. They'd prefer not to run him a lot, but that's going to be a key to keep Clemson honest and not just pinching down on the running backs off the edge or with blitzes from the safety or the slot. It's a big part of it. You must have a mobile quarterback in today's game to truly maximize your rushing attack, and Florida State will have one. Is he a complete dual threat where he's going to go get 100 yards for you? No, but he will help in that. And here's why it's so important. Stanford has Ashton Daniels. He's the quarterback that every team hates preparing for because he can throw it pretty well, and he'll go get you 30, 40, 50 yards in a game, no problem. He can motor. He's a kid out of Atlanta that was a little bit under-recruited, and Stanford took him, and he's done pretty well. He helped them do a good enough job that, quite frankly, I was surprised at the numbers. Matter of fact, I'll pull it up here in just a second. With the stats, it's kind of surprising because I knew Clemson's defense wasn't as good as I'd originally thought. But, I mean, they've been gashed. The stats, and get ready to throw on the screen for those of you on YouTube. They can see it. I'll read it off for everybody else. These are just this year's Clemson games rushing defense. No more, no less. So here we go. We're going to share the screen and talk a little bit about how bad they have been. And, again, this is surprising to me. I don't know how this happens at Clemson because all of the following before I diagnose these stats. Clemson is one of the 5 best teams in the nation, hands down at recruiting D-line. It is not in question. LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, and Bama. Those 5 schools by far do the best in D-line recruiting. There is no excuse for what I'm about to read off to you with Clemson's defense. Now, they get after the quarterback pretty good. They've got 16 tackles for loss. They do a good job of doing those things, but for some reason, they have just really struggled. Even though they are A, massive, B, experienced, have some young guys that are good too, they're just getting moved around. I don't think the coaching at Clemson on the defensive side of the ball is anywhere near where it used to be, and that's a problem for them. So here are some of the stats that you should know about the Clemson defense. Now, first game was against Georgia. The offense was terrible for Clemson, so they were on the field a lot as a defense, but the Dogs ran it 27 times for 169 yards, 6.26 per 2 touchdowns. Well, surely they would do really well against Appalachian State the next week. Sort of, yes, kind of, but 27 carries, 149 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown. That's Appalachian State. North Carolina State has been horrible this year, so surely they'll completely shut them down. No, they did not. 38 carries, 179 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. And then this last week, even though Stanford shot itself in the foot over and over and over again, once they got down deep, they had turnover problems in the red zone. Stanford ran it 44 times for 236 yards, 5.36 yards per carry. They didn't score a rushing touchdown, which is a little surprising, but they did move the football around. They had 2 consecutive turnovers, by the way, to start the game that just killed them, and then Clemson took advantage, which good for them. But the point is still the same. All 4 games, Clemson has been gashed in their quote-unquote best defensive effort. They gave up 4.71 yards per carry. To say the least, Clemson does not play the run well, and they do not play it well at all. So, can Florida State, a team who stinks at running the football, suddenly get better against Clemson? That might be strong, but there are opportunities here that do match up with what Clemson does poorly and with what Florida State has done, at least traditionally under Norvell and his staff, have done well. They do really well when they pull guys, get guys going laterally, and use their athleticism. Now, against Clemson, that's risky because it's not like they lack speed. There's one thing they certainly still do not lack, it is speed. Linebacker level, and I'll talk about some of these guys in a little bit, Woodaz, Carter, Sammy Brown, etc., they can fly. They're not going to be outran. You've got to use the eye candy to get them going in the wrong direction or at least make them hesitate. Clemson's not a defense that's going to be without some big plays, too. They're going to shoot gaps and take some chances. They're going to hit some negative plays. Is what it is. You must, regardless of that, find a way to be successful on first down, first and foremost. Number one thing in this entire game, with a freshman quarterback, essentially, he's a redshirt freshman, and Brock Glenn. Maybe Crumahawk plays a little bit as well. Luke hasn't played in a game yet. You put those guys in there without a running game, you're not going to be successful. And that's why I'm talking about this so much. If you can run the ball on first down with misdirection, buck sweep every now and then, something to kind of throw them off guard, maybe a Ja'Kai Douglas reverse, maybe a reverse pass, you have nothing to lose here. You're playing with house money. Nobody is picking you to beat Clemson. I'm not. I'm going to tell you that now before I do my podcast on Friday. I'm picking Clemson to win. Shocker. They're the better football team. That doesn't mean that Florida State can't improve and at least be in this game. To do it, again, 100% about running the football against a defense who's just not that good at stopping it. I mean, if App State ran for 149 yards, Appalachian State, Florida State has to be able to get into triple digits rather easily. If they don't, you will see a guy screaming on Saturday night when I do the live postgame show. I guarantee you that. I will not be shy about it. There's no excuse. So a couple of things that I want to note about the defense as a defensive whole here that are interesting to me. That I was surprised by this, again, that it was so bad. But I went back and I watched some of the Clemson game against Stanford. They got massive guys up front. Massive, and they're experienced. Trey Williams, Peyton Page, a couple of seniors. They're over 300 pounds, highly recruited guys. Between them, they've both played in 4 games. So 8 games combined, they have 11 tackles. Whoopee. That's not very good. Peter Woods is their best defensive lineman. He's out of Thompson High School in the Birmingham area, one of the best programs in the South. Played right away last year, etc. He's missed a game, and I don't know if he's going to play this weekend. I don't care what Dabo says or doesn't say. I don't trust anybody about that stuff, guys being banged up. They'll come in and out of the lineup, and you can't trust coaches during the season with injury reports. If he doesn't play, Clemson's defensive line's in trouble. Stefan Green, a freshman, a really good player, long-term, has played a lot. Like he was in on the first series against Stanford. He got washed out on a play. He might as well not even been in the game. His technique is not good. He plays high, but he is 6'4", 290 and athletic. He's not ready. He's been forced into the lineup. Now, we've discussed this at length, but Florida State's offensive line is insanely experienced. If they cannot beat up on a group that's quite honestly just completely underachieving against the run in the middle, Florida State should be able to run the ball in the A-gaps in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be dive plays, but counters, traps, and just basic plays towards the middle of the field or quarterback draw, anything of that nature, they should be able to do. If not, this game could get ugly. But the proof is in the film. If you don't believe me, go watch the first couple of series for Stanford. Now they got a freshman running back who's like, they stole him. He's a kid out of New Jersey. Good job by Stanford. I don't know who he was. I don't remember him as a recruit, but he's legit. And the quarterback can run too. They got another freshman running back that's pretty solid, but it's a bunch of young guys going against an experienced Clemson defense, and they just gash them. They were more physical, and they had a good direction with what they wanted to do. The coaching staff for Stanford's done a good job. They don't have a ton of talent, but they've done a good job. So I'm curious to see if Florida State can do that quite a bit. When we come back to Locked On Seminoles, we're going to talk about the better players that specifically they've got to find a way to avoid and or trick a little bit to get the ball into the end zone, not just with a flea flicker or some trick plays, to run true offense and knock them back and make some big plays. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Clemson has plenty of talent, but that talent can be fooled a little bit. As I mentioned a few moments ago, eye candy. That's basically the term that's used quite a bit, and I probably overuse it, with jet motions, sweeps, checks at the line of scrimmage to shift your offense to one side or the other to give it one-man advantage in blocking. You can do different things with those shifts and those motions. Sometimes teams get confused, or at least they hesitate because they're thinking. A thinking defense after the snap is a defense that's playing slow. I'm curious to see what they do, because there's always so much you're going to run with a quarterback who hasn't been with the ones that much. It's kind of an awkward situation, so I'm not going to speculate much on that. But I do think that Florida State's coaching staff will use a few new plays, whatever they might be, because they'll fit Brock better than they would DJ because he's more mobile. And B, they need to do something to keep Clemson off guard. That coaching staff is going to go over what Florida State has done in the first 5 games. They're going to analyze it, and they're going to be prepared for that. That's what they have to go on. The disadvantage with the quarterback being out of the lineup and you're the first team to play him, you don't know what the new guy's really going to do. You can look at the games that he played in last year, but that's different players that he's with, and he's been through an offseason. It's a totally different situation. Florida State is struggling on offense. They can only guess. So I expect Florida State to use some deception, if you will, with some new plays. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I would think. It'll also be interesting to see how much they put him in harm's way to kind of get him out on the edge, because, again, they have 2 quarterbacks on scholarship. That's a little risky. So here is the crux, if you will, of some of the guys that Florida State has to go up against. I'm just going to focus on the front 7, really. R.J. Mickens is a really good player in the secondary, as an example of safety, 210-pound guy that's good. But it's front 7 I'm focusing on, because if Florida State wins there, you can hit play action, some screens, etc. It's still about the run game, making sure that short passes, don't throw the ball to the wrong team. Clemson's secondary is legit. Lucas, Terrell, those guys, if you start playing 50-50 balls against that group, I'm not real confident that's going to end well for many teams. Florida State, especially with how bad the passing game's been this year, might be even worse. So must find a way to exploit these following players. The guy that I think is most consistent for them is Wade Woodaz. He's a kid I know. He played at Jesuit High School in Tampa, super intelligent, kind of operates on a different level mentally. Clemson always seems to have that guy on defense at linebacker, don't they? A kid that's just kind of one step ahead of everybody. He's been that guy. And also, he's a kid that's really aggressive downhill. He's gotten better in terms of his physical nature and how powerful he is. He's gained a lot of muscle since he's been at Clemson. He's 230 pounds now, and he can really run. I think he's the most important guy, because I doubt you're going to fool him much. It'll be more up to the running backs or the quarterback, whether it's Luke or Brock, to make him miss if they're running, and he's a good football player. He leads them in tackles with 26. He's got 2.5 tackles for loss, and he's got 4 quarterback hurries. So when Wade's in the game, there's a chance he's going to blitz. He's definitely going to play downhill, and he will be around the football. The guy that I mentioned a few minutes ago that's been out of the lineup a little bit, and I'm not sure if he's going to play. This is huge for this game, maybe the biggest part. Will Peter Woods, A, play, and B, is he really healthy? Kids don't even tell the trainers if they're healthy, so that's a bit subjective. But you can't teach 300-plus pounds in the athleticism that Peter Woods has. This is an interior defensive lineman with natural pass rushing ability. His twitchiness for a 300-pound guy is not normal. If he does not play and or he's in a scenario where he shouldn't be and he's on the field, Florida State might be able to take advantage of that. Guys want to play. I get it. But if he's in there and he's truly banged up, Florida State might be able to wash him down like they do Stephon Green. That's just something that you need to take a look at when he's in the game. And if he is in the game, I'm sure the announcers will talk about it. That's a guy you got to key on because he can change a football game in one play. He can get into the backfield in a hurry. He's so explosive. But if he's just plodding along, you'll know he's banged up. 3, TJ Parker, another kid out of the state of Alabama, plays at Phoenix City Central. Elite athleticism, twitchy off the edge, a strong side end guy. He can get after the quarterback. He's really good. 13 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. 4 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, forced fumble. It's most importantly with him, it's third down. He's the guy on third down no matter who else is on the field. You got to know where that guy is. TJ is capable of moving inside to go against the guard if they want, doing stunts. He could drop into coverage on a zone fire. Very, very versatile player. I expect Clemson to turn him loose like they do every week. He will be the most difficult cover for Florida State, who's honestly struggled quite a bit at tackle anyway. He's going to be lined up with tackles. If Florida State is not healthy at the tackle positions for this game, and again, I don't trust any coach with injury updates on their players, that could be a problem. He could be the biggest game wrecker there is. The guy that I've always been impressed with since he was in high school, and quite frankly is just a man-child physically, that's Barrett Carter. Linebackers just aren't built like him very often. He's 6 foot, 6'1", 230 pounds, runs like a deer. He's got 20 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, a sack, quarterback hurry, and he's just all over the field. He's a pure athlete that will thump you. He looks like an NFL player, and he plays like one. I think you can get him going right to left a little bit with some eye candy, but at the same time, I don't think that he's going to be fooled all that often. I hope I'm wrong on this, but we'll see. The one area I think is in addition to the run game where they might be able to catch him, and Florida State runs this quite a bit. If he's in man on a wheel route, he likes to play downhill too. You might be able to catch him in a situation where a stop and go with the tight end or a wheel route with the running back. You might be able to get him down the field. If you're going to run the ball, that's fine, but eventually you got to hit something off of that in the passing game. You might be able to get Carter on one of those. The newest player and one that was a highly touted kid that everybody recruited in the country, another kid out of Georgia, Sammy Brown. He's a linebacker. He leads them in tackles for loss as a freshman. That's impressive. 5.5 tackles for loss for Sammy. And to be honest with you, I didn't see that coming. Not many linebackers make a major impact at the college level. He's got 20 tackles as well. He's got a couple of sacks. That is not a guy I'd want to tick off because he's like Carter. He looks the part. 6'3", 230, 235, something like that. He's an impressive physical specimen. I think that Florida State might try to attack him mentally, though, put him in spots where he's got to make decisions instead of just playing downhill. If you're going to use motion and shifts, try to get freshmen in bad spots. That's what I would do. And quite honestly, that's what most coaches do. Depending on how they use him in this game, they might use him more as a blitzer, etc. Clemson might find themselves in a feast or famine. He might have a couple plays in the backfield, but he also might be looking at the back of a jersey of somebody like Lawrence Tofili that he was supposed to be in coverage and peel off with, but he took a step too late to do it. You know, he's a freshman. You've got to put him in circumstances where he's not coming downhill. Anytime you're in man coverage with him, if there's any at all, and I expect there'll be some, got to take advantage. Be curious to see how Brock Glenn and Luke Krumahawk handle that. There are matchups everywhere you're looking for when certain guys are on the field. Coaches talk about this in pregame and all week during practice. These are the guys we've got to beat to score points. Sammy's a feast or famine. He's a true freshman, but he's a linebacker. It's really hard for freshmen to learn on the fly during a season. They're going to see some interesting things from Florida State. That's a guy you can take care of. I'm not going to talk about specifics for their secondary, but I did want to highlight the following. Their secondary, again, like I said, it's legit. PFF gives them an overall team coverage grade of 89.1. That is outstanding. It is top 15 in the country by any measurement you want to go with, probably top 5 or so. You're not going to just beat their corners one-on-one, and it's not like Florida State's DBs have been killing it. So with that in mind, I expect Florida State to screen them to death. Live with it, even if they're not doing well. I don't like all the screens they've been running, but with the redshirt freshman quarterback, I get it. And to take shots. They're going to avoid the middle of the field, the thing that I hate saying because I've been talking so much about DJ needs to attack it more. They'll do it a little bit, but it's going to be more max protect, play action, 3rd and 2 or something, take chances. Again, they're playing with house money. Nobody expects Norvell and the Noles to beat Clemson really this weekend, and they're not going to challenge those corners that much. I could be wrong with that, but both those guys are going to at least make it to NFL draft camps. So I don't think that's the best plan. We'll see if I'm right or wrong, but that's something to think about. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Florida State's ability to recruit the quarterback position and where they're at now and how it could kind of work out good, even though at the beginning of this, not so much. So we'll come back. We'll talk a little Noles in terms of the ability to recruit the quarterback position. Brock Glenn is a redshirt freshman. He's from the class of 23. Luke Cromahawk is a true freshman. He is class of 2024. But if you go back and look at Clemson or Oklahoma or USC or Michigan, any of the teams that have had successful runs, let's say in the last 10 years, Florida State included, everything is going to come down to a couple of basic positions on whether you really get over the top. Line of scrimmage on both sides, corner, you need at least one true elite playmaker outside. I don't want to say wide receiver because look at what happened at Georgia last year. Brock Bowers was their best guy, and he's a tight end. It can be something different, but you can't miss on quarterback, right? Well, right now, if you look at Florida State, this is 20, 21, and 22. They're 3 quarterback classes. Chuba Purdy transferred in up at Nebraska, hasn't done anything. 21, didn't sign anybody. 22, A.J. Duffy, oh boy. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. They didn't get anybody, or Tate Rodemaker was in there, but he's not that great either, let's be honest. He's at Southern Miss. They just didn't do anything at quarterback for 3 straight years. You're not going to win that way. You're not going to win that way. Florida State's lucky, to be honest, to be in the position they're in, as bad as it is, because they got back-to-back classes with Glenn and Cromahawk that are talented quarterbacks that were Elite 11 guys I've seen with my own eyes, and they have a long-term future. Now, the short term is not probably going to go well. I think we can all reasonably say that. Quarterback is hard. Freshman quarterbacks, redshirt freshman quarterbacks, as I've said 1,000 times on this show, and will continue to say, usually don't play well when teams know they're going to be going against them and they can truly prepare for them. Is what it is. Here's the good news. Florida State is going to go through the rest of the season. They're probably not going to a bowl game. I think we can all safely assume that. To me, I know the coaches won't look at it this way. The upper class won't look at it this way, but the fans probably will. Only thing they care about is upper echelon seasons. That's just how fans are. It's how I look at it as well. You're preparing now for the 25 season. These are games, but these are games to analyze your program at the quarterback position. Brock Glenn, Luke Cromahawk, we don't know what they're going to do. We can anticipate, and I can tell you more about them each and every week, but we got to see them play. You've got 2 classes back-to-back with talented quarterbacks. If you're going to dig yourself out of this hole, a good starting point is finding quarterback play that is not only good for now, but it's something they can build on each week and then go into the offseason with some positivity. Lord only knows this program needs it. Now, again, to reiterate, I do not anticipate it going well against Clemson overall in the passing game. I do not. I think it'll be a stat line in the 55 to 58% range, to be honest. At least one pick between the 2 of them, probably multiple, and probably a few just horrendous moments on reading the defense in terms of setting the protections and the quarterbacks getting blasted. That's honest. Why? Again, it's just hard. There is nothing like live reps, especially when you didn't get all the first team reps, or hardly any, all the way through fall camp and up to this point. It's a horrific situation for Brock and Luke initially to go through. Next year, it'll be looked at differently. So as you watch the game against Clemson unfold, and again, I expect Clemson to win going away. I do not hide that at all. But as you look at that game, and you go look maybe like 4 or 5 months, you go back and look at it on YouTube or something. Remember, this is the beginning point. not the ending point. You got to go through this. Most quarterbacks, quite frankly, stink for about their first 400 passes in college at minimum. Stink. They're going to be very turnover prone. They're going to miss reads. They're not going to be good at setting protections, getting themselves in the right place. It takes live reps. It's been proven for decades that's not going to suddenly change overnight just because Brock Glenn's behind center or Luke Kromenhoek is behind center for the Noles. I still think this is the best thing because you got to get through it. And this season's pretty much a loss anyway. Prove me wrong. Maybe they come out and play better. It can't really play a lot worse than DJ did. He was, 54% or something like that. He was very, very poor. I think we're going to find out more about what they can do as an offense too, because both these kids can run. Again, they're neither one of them is Jordan Travis, but they can both run RPO. They can both run a quarterback outside zone play where they just give them a chance on an RPO kind of deal. Anything you want on the perimeter, they can do. DJ just couldn't do those kind of plays. He couldn't run bootlegs and waggles without the defensive end being in his face almost immediately. He just couldn't outrun them. Both these kids will at least be able to get outside the edge. And that's so important. Norvell's offenses have usually worked really well when he has a guy like that. So I think that's going to be a building block to look at. And then, of course, we still got to see if they can throw from the pocket. At some point, you got to be able to take the snap, read the defense, even if they show you a completely different look than the one they gave you pre-snap. Read it, recognize it, and throw it on time. There are about 20 guys on the planet that do that well. And I'm not talking about anybody in college. It's hardly anybody, but you got to at least be able to do it a little bit in college. Even the elite guys, he's a Heisman winner. He's going to be great in the pros. You don't know. Post-snap reads is the difference between winning big time and just being okay. Look at the guy at Georgia this past week. He's probably going to be the first quarterback taken in the draft next year. He struggled. He looked terrible against Bama early in the game. Everybody has those moments. Again, Brock Glenn, Luke Kromenhoek are probably going to have to go through some of those this week against Clemson. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Seminoles. Thank you once again for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in and talk some Noles football with me. If you haven't already, please hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to this podcast. Comment. Let me know what your expectations are for Luke, for Brock, for the offensive line, or anything else with Florida State. I'd love to hear from you. Everybody have a good one, and I will see you again soon.